Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, the Prime Minister, in a no-holds-barred attack on the Congress, accuses it of adopting the divide and rule policy of the British to rule a multicultural, diverse country. Hurtling back the words of Jawaharlal Nehru in answer to Rahul Gandhi's accusations of the government hurting federalism, which he did in a speech in Parliament a few days back. The Prime Minister said it was the Congress which had a divisive mentality. Angrez chale gaye, but divide and rule remain. That's why the Congress has become the leader of the Tukde Tukde gang, is what the Prime Minister said today. Now, these were just some of the remarks of the Prime Minister. You'll hear them in just a little while from now. But the question is this: the Prime Minister tears into the Congress. Why is the Congress still enemy number one? Why is Mr. Modi still concerned about the Congress party? Next on the show, the controversy over headscarves in Karnataka has intensified, with students defying the government order to use uniform clothing to maintain so-called unity and equality. Ahead of a crucial High Court hearing tomorrow, the Chief Minister has now appealed for peace. Now, the controversy started last month at the Government Girls PU College in Udupi, with 6 students alleging that they had been barred from classes for wearing headscarves, and many Muslim girls took up the practice in protest. Now, right-wing groups in Udupi and elsewhere objected to headscarves, and the protests spread across the state. In fact, many turned up in saffron scarves in a retaliatory move. So that's what it's: scarves, saffron scarves versus hijab wearing girls. That's where this debate has come to. Hopefully, it remains peaceful thus far. But let's listen in to what the Prime Minister said in Parliament and then get reactions from the Congress and the BJP in a debate.
इस कोरोना काल में कांग्रेस ने तो हद कर दी। लोगों को प्रेरित किया गया कि जाओ महाराष्ट्र में हमारे पर जो बोझ है वो जरा कम हो, और जाओ तुम उत्तर प्रदेश के हो, तुम बिहार के हो, जाओ वहां कोरोना फैलाओ। आपने हमारे श्रमिक भाइयों बहनों को अनेक परेशानियों में धकेल दिया। दिल्ली में ऐसी सरकार थी जो है, उस सरकार ने तो जीप पर माइक बांध करके दिल्ली की झुग्गी झोपड़ी में गाड़ी घुमा करके लोगों को कहा संकट बड़ा है, भागो, गांव जाओ, घर जाओ। यूपी में, उत्तराखंड में, पंजाब में जिस कोरोना की इतनी गति नहीं थी, इतनी तीव्रता नहीं थी, इस पाप के कारण कोरोना ने वहां भी अपनी लपेट में ले लिया। कितने राजनीतिक दल के नेता जो जनता के माने हुए नेता अपने आप को मानते हैं, उन्होंने लोगों को रिक्वेस्ट की हो, अपील की हो, भाई कोरोना का एक ऐसा संकट है, वैश्विक महामारी है, आप मास्क पहनो, हाथ धोना रखो, 2 गज की दूरी रखो। कितने नेता हैं, क्या ये बार बार देश की जनता को अगर कहते तो उसमें कोई बीजेपी की सरकार को क्या फायदा होने वाला था? जब सीडीएस रावत का बॉडी वहां से निकल रहा था, तब हर तमिलवासी गौरव के साथ हाथ ऊपर कर करके आंख में आंसू के साथ कहता था, वीर वणक्कम, वीर वणक्कम, वीर वणक्कम, ये मेरा देश है। लेकिन कांग्रेस को हमेशा से इन बातों से नफरत रही है। विभाजनकारी मानसिकता उनके डीएनए में घुस गई है। अंग्रेज चले गए, लेकिन बांटो और राज करो, ये नीति कांग्रेस ने अपना चरित्र बना लिया है। और इसलिए ही आज कांग्रेस टुकड़े टुकड़े गैंग की लीडर बन गई है। कि आप में से बहुत लोग ऐसे हैं जिनके सुई कांटा 2014 में अटका हुआ है और उससे वो बाहर ही निकल नहीं पाते हैं। हम तो एक चुनाव हार जाए ना, महीनों तक न जाने इकोसिस्टम क्या क्या करती है। इतना सारा पराजय होने के बावजूद भी ना आपका अहंकार जाता है, न आपकी इकोसिस्टम आपके अहंकार को जाने देती है। इन्हें आईना मत दिखाओ, वो आईने को भी तोड़ देंगे। आलोचना ये जीवंत लोकतंत्र का एक आभूषण है, लेकिन अंध विरोध ये लोकतंत्र का अनादर है।
All right, very strong words there from the Prime Minister. Let's get reactions. Ami-Ben Yagnik, Rajya Sabha MP of the Congress, with me. I'm also joined by Ranbir Singh Pathania of the BJP. Ami-Ben, the first reaction I'd like to get to you is from what the Prime Minister had to say. He's accused the opposition of spreading COVID in this country.
Well, Vishnuji, I thought that it would be a parliamentary speech, but it turned out to be a political speech. In fact, when he touched upon the COVID part, I thought there would be words of sympathy, there would be remorse that so many deaths in the country have taken place. The healthcare system has not been as efficient as it should be and should have reached them. The PM Cares Fund also could not stop these deaths. So I was expecting that kind of a thing from the Honorable Prime Minister. But it was an absolutely political speech. And somewhere, I think, every time the Honorable Prime Minister, we wait to hear him address on the issues of this country, you always find that he wants to mock the Congress party and its leaders. So no word on unemployment, no word on making or boosting the healthcare system for the people of this country, no word for education.
I mean, let's take a reaction on this COVID assertion. Because Mr. Pathania, the problem with that assertion is that he seems to have taken the entire problem of migrants and just taken that crisis and put it with the opposition, whether it's the Aam Aadmi Party or the Congress. Where is the evidence of that? These people were unable to stay put in one place, the migrants. They suffered immensely. There was no income which was available, no housing which was available. Is it enough to blame the Congress or the Aam Aadmi Party?
Vishnu, so you see, it's an accepted fact that by and large, I don't say 110%, but by and large, government had arranged safe transportation of each and every stranded labor, food and shelter for each and every stranded labor. But you see, there was people running helter and skelter. There were people sitting on tops of trains, on buses, running on foot on kilometers and kilometers. So this statement needs to be not as a political statement. This is a statement given by the Prime Minister of a country that even on the floor of the Parliament. This exposes. Once we have took better of COVID in wave 3, this needs to be asserted and nation has a right to know. And the Honorable Prime Minister has been on the right note. He has, we could say, pulled the cat out of the bag. Now things are out in the open. Now it is for the people to come and decide and give a value judgment, we could say decision on the Herculean lapse committed by the Congress and other political parties, particularly the one in Maharashtra and the one in Delhi, and we could say the other also Fringe Pairs also, they couldn't leave. You see, what is the bottom line?
What you are saying is questionable, sir.
Politics. When the country was...
When you say, sir, no, sir, let's do a little fact check about this, and please disagree if you want, Mr. Pathania, but it's not enough to say that the Prime Minister had organized all the transport or the government had organized all the transport. That's not necessarily the case for migrants at all. If you look at what Priyanka Chaturvedi in a series of tweets has actually come up with, she says, when Shramik trains started, can the nation forget how these poor labourers who were left with no income were being charged for a ticket and that the state government had to step in Maharashtra to pay their fare? If that is a mistake in the eyes of the Prime Minister, they are willing to commit this mistake over and over. Major daily wage labourers were left stranded. If looking after them with food and shelter was wrong, then they're willing to do this over and over again. So, factually speaking, sir, where is Priyanka Chaturvedi in these tweets wrong?
Sir, I reiterate my submission that by and large, though I accept it, we tried to strike a cooperative deal with the states also, with the concerned UT governments also. The Bharat Sarkar planned safe homegoing for all these stranded laborers. We could say a balanced diet and a and a decent shelter for each and every stranded laborer.
So then why were people moving away, sir, if they had no income?
Sir, that's what I'm telling you.
People were desperate.
There was a communication gap.
A communication gap. And it's as simple as that.
There was a there was a created note once the Prime Minister spilled the beans on the floor of the Parliament, sir. This was deliberate.
All right. Okay, let's get a reaction to that before I move on to my next point. Amiben, there was a communication gap which perhaps resulted in lakhs of migrants from various cities moving to their homes. Do you accept that?
Who created this communication gap? So this is what I'm saying.
Who created this communication gap? Amiben.
They couldn't fight
Mr. Patania,
they couldn't find the appropriate food. And who created this? This
right,
is what
okay. So it is, ma'am, respond to that.
This is what the Honorable Prime Minister says, sir. Where from the communication gap erupted.
The fact that there was an utter failure on the part of the government, and despite all these arguments coming forth today, not a word was there in the Prime Minister's speech that we arrange for these many facilities for the laborers or people who were going from one state to another or to their homes. Let us say a broader terminology instead of using the migrant people. All those who wanted to move to their homes because of this unprecedented, unexpected havoc that was created by the COVID and the lockdown. Was there any word that we did this? They did not do anything. Forget about food, forget about trains, forget about buses. Several NGOs and the Congress party workers at every nook and corner had come to the forefront and has helped. You can look at the tweets
and one of the saddest stories in this entire COVID mess. There were situations when people were being fumigated as they went from place to place. It was absolutely disastrous. But be that as it may, Amiben, the other point mentioned by the Prime Minister is that the British have gone, but the Congress has made divide and rule their policy and their character. The Congress is today leader of the Tukde Tukde gang. Respond to that, then I'll get Mr. Patania.
I think, Vishnuji, there should be grace in the position of the Honorable Prime Minister. Using this kind of language and going back to colonial times and talking about divide and rule. Who is the ruler in this country and who is ruling at the present and the last 7 years? Who is the ruler and who is indulging into these kind of political gimmicks rather than coming with a proper governance model for the people of this country? There are challenges galore on the food front and employment. There is the price rise.
But
there is
fuel price. The Congress is divisive, that you base your politics on divide and rule. There were references to separatism encouraged by the Congress party as well. I think, answer those questions, not what this government may or may not have done.
Not at all. I think somewhere he should, the Prime Minister, I'm sorry, I have to make a request to him that he should go from the beginning of the 1947 till date and read everything. You know, they were not there before 1980. They were all with the RSS. Now to talk about a period where they were not there, they have not passed on that journey. They have not contributed to the freedom struggle. Okay. And you make statements which are absolutely not based on any facts. I think these are just attacks on the Congress party. And the Honorable Prime Minister expected a lot of dignity in the address, but I think it was just attacking the Congress.
All right, Mr. Patania,
rather than talking about what are the issues of the presidential address.
The Prime Minister says that the Congress is stuck in 2014, that they cannot get beyond that. In fact, electorally, in various states, they've actually come to power. They've lost various states. But why are they stuck in 2014? What is he talking about? Their mindset?
I seek to differ from the punchline you have invented here. The policy of the Prime Minister's speech today. It's a speech whereby he asserts himself as a man of performance, as a man of commitment, as a man of developmental indicators. He has harped upon how many toilets, how many bank accounts, how many Ujjwala connections, how many houses. But at the same time, he has attacked the Congress for indulging divisive rhetorics, for trying to indulge in political narrative on we could say issues just out of thin air. So this is the punchline, sir. What the Prime Minister has said, he has cast for marginal farmers. He has quoted with figures, with facts and figures.
Would you agree, Mr. Patania, that it was 50-50, 50% of his speech was in fact attacking the Congress? 50 may have been on development, as you correctly mentioned. But why was the Prime Minister so worried about the Congress if the Congress, by the BJP's own statements is not much of a party to be worried about?
Sir, because Congress, in alliance with the other political parties, wants to shift the political narrative from the politics of performance. Because they want to shift, the iota, or we could say focus, from the politics of performance. We have performed. Had anybody dreamt of that?
Okay, so that's a fair point.
11 affordable toilet, how many Ujjwala connections, housing for all by 2022, a tap water for all by 2022.
No, I just want to look at this from a political standpoint, because let's face it, Mr. Patania, this was an intensely political speech. I mean, that's his prerogative. But Ami Bain, what Mr. Patania just mentioned is interesting, that the Congress and the opposition is trying to shift the narrative from development to other things, which is why the Prime Minister had to respond.
Yes.
What do you have to say to that?
Well, who is shifting the narrative from what to where? The world is watching and the country is watching. In fact, all those people who are affected and are looking for social justice wanted to hear something that they would get. That is the narrative, that is the real ground. And to run away from answering these issues which are plaguing the country today, especially post-pandemic, I think no answer came forth. And all the time going back to Pandit Nehruji, yes, I'm glad that he read Pandit Nehruji and he had to point out that this was a person who was a visionary for this country. He brought all these institutions, not a word about that. So why bother about, if you are not worried about the Congress party, why should you worry about any narrative or opposition parties coming together and shifting the narrative? Why should you be worried at all?
All right, why be worried at all? We'll leave it over there. Ami Bain and Mr. Patania, I'd like to thank you both very much for joining us. I want to move on now to my next debate. Next up on the program, the controversy over headscarves in Karnataka has intensified, with students defying the government order to use uniform clothing to maintain unity and equality. Now, tomorrow is a crucial court hearing. The Chief Minister has appealed for peace. Let me just quickly, as you can see from these images, these protests have expanded. So you've got women, students in hijabs saying that, look, let me in, I want to study. And you've got a counter protest of young men with saffron scarves saying that if they wear that, then I can do this as well, because we can all do whatever we want since it all has some sort of a religious basis, as these Muslim women in hijabs say that it does. So joining us on this, Mihra Sood, Geeta Bhatt and Salman Soz. Ms. Bhatt, let me come to you first. Geeta ji, today the problem is hijabs. Where does this end? You know, tomorrow somebody will say a Sikh student cannot wear a turban, a Hindu student cannot have a bindi, you know, somebody cannot wear a kada. Why get into this at all?
Vishnuji, thanks for having me on your show. And these recent developments in Karnataka schools, I must say, these developments, they are a very designed controversy. There is nothing organic about, these protests. And this is basically about an individual's choice of covering her face being imposed over an institution's right to decide on a dress code. Now, as far as, there are those who are coming out in support of this and saying, that this is part of their religious practices. Let me just tell you that, in 2019, one of the biggest educational societies in south of India, Muslim Education Society, in 2019, it is a society which has got more than 100 institutions, professional courses, schools, etc., not only in India but abroad. They banned, covering of face in their institutions, and their president of the society,
no, but does that necessarily make it right? Hijab is banned in educational institutions in many parts of the world. Does that mean it's necessarily right?
You see, the point is
in France, even outside.
No. You see, no, Vishnuji, just let me complete. You see, why I'm saying is that it is being portrayed as if it is a part of a religious practice. So there are institutions which are, Muslim institutions which have been saying.
All right, that's a separate point and we'll debate that.
Give me just 10 seconds more. I want to just put forth one or two more points, related to it. That there are people who have been saying that in south of India, it is only before, 2 quarters, nobody even knew that, what wheels are, because this is more of an Arabic culture practice.
All right.
Covering your face, it is not something which is a part of an Indian culture.
I'm only interrupting you because it's only fair. You've raised points. These are all debatable. Salman, let me come to you next. Did any of those girls, women, appear to be coerced? And therefore, when Geeta ji says that this is part of a political effort or some sort of an effort on top, do you believe that they've fallen into some sort of a trap? Did they appear to be coerced? Salman, you're on mute. Will you just unmute yourself?
So, Vishnu, I don't, these are fantasies that the BJP is propagating, because I'm shocked in some ways that a woman should not stand up and say, I want to defend the right of these girls to get an education. In a country where female labor force participation rates are languishing at 20% or below, whereas China is at about 65%, this is what they're telling our children. Research suggests that girls getting an education means that they marry later, they're healthier when they get married, they have healthier children, and that is good for the economy.
Right. So the bottom line is education.
Listen to me. Countries are losing $15 to $30 trillion over the life of these women when they do not have enough education and economic opportunities. So the Prime Minister should be standing up and saying, I had the slogan, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. How dare you? How dare you stop these girls from getting an education? They're my daughters. I may not have my own daughter.
Okay,
but
Mihra,
they are my children.
All right, Mihra, go ahead with the point that you're mentioning. Yes.
So
Salman, half a sec. Mihra, I just wanted to come in. Yeah.
Vishnu, the anti-hijab activists are making three arguments. Fig leaves, but let's take it at face value. Three arguments: uniformity, secularism, and women's rights. Now let's take this one by one. If you want uniformity, do not single out one religion. Ban every religious symbol. Is anybody coming out and saying we will ban turbans, bindis, kadas, vibhuti, caste marks, and anything else? No, nobody has the guts to say that. So there is no question of uniformity. This argument of uniformity is absolute hogwash. Secondly, secularism. What does secularism say? Treat all religions equally. You cannot have an arbitrary uniform law that suddenly comes up and says only headscarves are barred. But if somebody drapes a dupatta over their head, it's not barred. That's not secularism. And thirdly, the fig leaf of women's rights that is being raised. I mean, first of all, as Salman pointed out, there's nothing to suggest coercion. The women themselves are saying, we want to wear this. This is our right. But also, and it's ironic, you cannot on the one hand say women's empowerment and then say deny them their own education. You want, even if you think that hijab is forced, let's even take that argument at face value. Okay. The best way to counter forced hijab is to educate women. This is the government that trumpets Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, but is denying women education in the name of empowerment. There can be nothing more ironic than that. And coming to Geeta's point about these are staged protests, there is something suspicious about the timing of all of this. There is something suspicious about the timing of all of this. There's something suspicious about the timing of them suddenly being banned from entering when they've been wearing it all along. And let me also point out that talking about full face covering and hijab are two very different debates, as we have seen. Okay?
All right, okay, lots of points over there. Geeta ji, also as you respond,
also because people are wearing masks.
Right. So as you respond to Salman and Mihra, Geeta ji, also look at what the law says. This has been settled, in fact, in courts. Article 25 guarantees the freedom of religion, the freedom of choice with respect to headdress, to dresses based on religious injunctions. And this has been affirmed by the Supreme Court in a 1954 decision. So therefore, you know, what's wrong with what these students were doing? We can debate the merits of, you know, of hijab and whether it should be worn and what it symbolizes elsewhere. But right now it seems to be just an effort at denying this to them.
Yeah, Vishnuji, that is 2:1, so please give me, some
please
more
go
time
ahead,
to say. Yeah. So, Vishnuji, first point that I want to make here is that, time and again, like you're mentioning, there are also High Court judgments in Kerala High Court in 2019. Similar case came where a Muslim girls had gone who were studying in Christian school, and they were not allowed to wear a hijab, and the court said that while these students have full right of, covering their face or dress up the way they want to dress up, but they're not at the cost of annihilating the right of an institution to decide on a dress code. Now, let me tell you that there is, and this projection which is being false projection of that, it is about denying girls from educating, not at all. It is a free country. If one particular school is not has a particular dress code which does not suit your individual choice, there are other schools where this might be a part of a dress code.
No,
so you can go and study over there in the university. I'm coming to that. Please, Vishnuji, please let me complete. Please let me complete. While there are, Islamic countries where women are, burning their hijab, saying that we want freedom for it, there are few in this country, so-called liberals, who, when the Sabarimala judgment had come, which actually was the right of the deity to decide that who enters his temple, those who were hailing it as women's empowerment are today saying, no, wearing the hijab is a women's empowerment. That also is one contradiction
right,
which is coming over here. The point over here is that even 2 days back in Kerala, there are student volunteers from schools who go to the Kerala police as volunteers. There again, Muslim girls have said that we want to cover our face, and the Kerala government has denied it, that they have to wear a prescribed uniform. They will not be allowed.
All right, 1 second. That entire issue of prescribed uniform, there's a law also above that. Meera, 30 seconds. Salman is going to suffer because there won't be enough time for him. But Meera, go ahead.
All right. First of all, this issue of liberals being confused, saying one thing for Sabarimala, one thing here, that's not true. The issue at the heart of both of them is a women's agency and the woman's right to choose. All right. That's what the right-wing government is denying. And let's not confuse what the Kerala High Court said in respect of a Christian institution, as under law, minority institutions may have regulations that government-funded institutions, public institutions like these PU colleges cannot have. So there is no comparison.
Okay, no comparison over there.
So that means one minority is right and other minorities right are also at contradiction. So one minority is right.
All right, Salman, literally 20 seconds, please.
So I think, look, Geeta ji, the point is, I understand what is happening in India. Basically, there's a constant marginalization of Muslims. I think this is part of the same trajectory. Let us not beat around the bush. This is about making Muslims second-class citizens, because that is what RSS and BJP think will lead to Hindu Rashtra. There's nothing else.
Okay, you made your point, Salman, and I will need to debate this later on. I am out of time. This is the problem of television. I apologize. Lots of views coming in. Sameer Thakur has written, he says, why is the college and the state focusing more on attire rather than studies? Manohar Mahato says, and the attire has nothing to do with studies. Perhaps that, in fact, as it's been mentioned in our debate, should be the only priority. Out of time. Goodbye.